Apple Podcast title, The Secret Weapon of the NHL, Unpacking the Frank J. Selke Trophy.
Join us for a deep dive into the history of the NHL's Frank J. Selke Trophy, the ultimate honor for the league's best defensive forwards. We unpack the Wikipedia archives to explore the legends who mastered the two-way game, from Bob Gainey's inaugural 4-year sweep to Patrice Bergeron's record-breaking 6 wins, discover the rare unicorn seasons, like Sergei Fedorov's historic MVP Double Crown, and find out which NHL franchises have built true dynasties of defense. Whether you're a hockey fanatic or just love uncovering the hidden mechanics of team sports, this episode proves why stopping goals is just as legendary as scoring them. SEO keywords, NHL awards, Frank J. Selke Trophy, best defensive forwards, two-way hockey players, Patrice Bergeron, Bob Gainey, Detroit Red Wings, hockey history, NHL MVP.
Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one.
So when you look at the architecture of a championship hockey team, the spotlight almost universally gravitates toward the goal scorers.
Oh.
Right. We memorialize the 50-goal seasons, the highlight reel deeks. You know, players who bring 30,000 people to their feet on a Tuesday night.
The guys who sell the jerseys, basically.
Exactly. But today, we are completely flipping the script. We are digging into the historical Wikipedia archives to look at the unsung heroes.
The players who actively dismantle those highlight reel moments.
Yes. We are talking about the Frank J. Selke Trophy, which is the NHL's ultimate honor for the best defensive forward. And our mission today is really to figure out what makes the ultimate two-way forward and how this specific award has evolved since the 1970s.
Because it requires a fundamental shift in how you evaluate the game. I mean, if you are a forward in the NHL, your baseline expectation, your literal job title implies generating offense.
Right, your job is to go forward.
Exactly. And coaches usually protect their top offensive forwards. They give them favorable zone starts, trying to keep them out of their own end as much as possible.
So when we talk about the Selke Trophy, we're looking at players who shoulder the absolute hardest minutes.
Night in and night out against the opponent's absolute best lines. And they still manage to tilt the ice in their team's favor. True mastery often involves excelling at that unglamorous, gritty work that just doesn't make the front page.
And the voting process for the Selke really reflects how subjective that evaluation can be.
Yeah, it's not a simple math equation.
Right, it's not just handed to the guy with the most blocked shots. The winner is determined by a poll of the Professional Hockey Writers Association at the end of the regular season.
They're trying to quantify something that doesn't always show up on a traditional stat sheet.
They're looking for the forward who demonstrates the most skill in the defensive component of the game. And to understand why this specific award holds so much weight, we really have to go back to its origins.
The 1977-78 NHL season.
Right. And it's named after Frank J. Selke,
who was a legendary general manager for both the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens.
a massive figure in the sport.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture of league history, naming an award after Selke was a profound statement by the NHL. Well, it was the 5th and final major NHL award to be named after the general managers and owners of the original 6 teams.
Wow, that puts it in some incredibly rarefied air.
It really does.
Because you look at the other awards in that original 6 pantheon, you've got the Art Ross Trophy for the league's top scorer,
Right.
the James Norris Memorial Trophy for the best defenseman, the Conn Smythe for playoff MVP, and the Jack Adams for the top coach.
So by placing the Selke Trophy right alongside those giants, the league was essentially carving defensive forward play into the Mount Rushmore of hockey skulls.
They were stating that shutting down the opposition is fundamentally just as vital to the legacy of the sport as scoring or goaltending,
It elevated the two-way game from a tactical necessity to a formalized art.
which is a huge shift.
Huge. Before the Selke, a forward who dedicated their energy to back-checking killing penalties and neutralizing the neutral zone might be a coach's favorite player, but they weren't necessarily getting league-wide recognition.
The Selke Trophy gave that style of play a tangible ultimate goal. But whenever you introduce a brand new award to a sport, there is an inherent challenge.
Someone has to actually define what winning it looks like.
And that responsibility fell squarely on the shoulders of Bob Gainey of the Montreal Canadiens.
The ultimate pioneer for this.
Oh, absolutely. He didn't just win the inaugural award in the 77-78 season. He won it the next year.
And the year after that.
And the year after that.
Yeah.
In fact, Gainey won the Selke for the first 4 years. It existed straight through the 1980-81 season.
Which is a fascinating statistical anomaly in sports history.
It's unheard of.
Usually when a new metric or award is introduced, you see a period of high variance. Different players and different styles compete to set the standard.
Gotti, playing left wing for Montreal, just completely monopolized it.
He essentially wrote the manual for what a defensive forward was supposed to be in the modern NHL.
Think about the psychological impact of that on the rest of the league. You have this brand new piece of hardware, and one guy just immediately claims it as his personal property for half a decade,
Every other coach and player in the league must have been dissecting Gainey's tape.
trying to reverse engineer his positioning, his stick work, his anticipation.
He was the undisputed standard bearer.
And standards inevitably evolve. The game Bob Gainey played in the late 1970s was vastly different from the speed and tactical complexity of the modern NHL.
A completely different universe. The physical toll of playing a 200-foot game today, skating goal line to goal line, engaging in board battles, and transitioning the puck against modern defensive structures, makes what Patrice Bergeron accomplished almost impossible to comprehend.
Bergeron really is the modern king of this award. If Gainey laid the foundation, Bergeron built the skyscraper.
That's a great way to put it.
He holds the all-time record with 6 Selke wins playing for the Boston Bruins. And what stands out isn't just the sheer number, but the timeline.
The longevity is crazy.
His first win came in the 2011-12 season, and his record-breaking 6th win was in the 2022-23 season.
That level of dominance over a 12-year span requires a staggering hockey IQ.
Because physical dominance fades, right?
Exactly. Physical dominance fades, but the anticipation required to consistently intercept passes, win crucial faceoffs, and dismantle set plays requires a mind that processes the game seconds ahead of everyone else.
To maintain that apex position through different eras of league pacing and rule changes is just a testament to unparalleled discipline.
And the gap between Bergeron and the rest of the league is massive when you look at the all-time leaderboard.
It really is. Below his 6 wins, the next closest tier is the Three-Timers Club, and it is an incredibly exclusive list.
Very exclusive.
You only have 4 players in the history of the league tied with 3 wins apiece. Guy Carbonneau, Jerry Leletton, Pavel Datsyuk, and the current holder of the trophy as of the 2024-25 season, Alexander Barkov of the Florida Panthers.
And looking at those names, you actually see the evolution of the two-way player.
How so?
Well, you move from the gritty checking line specialists of the 80s and early 90s, like Carbonneau, to players like Datsyuk and Barkov. These are highly skilled, top-line offensive drivers who just happen to be equally terrifying without the puck.
Right, they aren't just out there to defend.
Exactly. And it highlights a core truth about value, not just in hockey, but broadly speaking for you listening to this.
Yeah, think about your own career or interests.
Right. The players on this list became the absolute structural load-bearing walls for their franchises. When you establish yourself as the absolute best at a specific, highly difficult skill, your value becomes unquestionable. You might not always be the flashiest person in the room, but if you remove them from the lineup, the entire defensive scheme collapses.
That transition from checking line grinder to top line star brings up a really fascinating tension in the history of the Selke.
The offensive trade-off.
Exactly.
Right.
Because the traditional assumption is that if you are dedicating all this energy to shutting down the other team's best players, your own offensive numbers are going to suffer.
You can't be everything all at once.
Right. But here's where it gets really interesting. The historical record shows us a few incredibly rare instances where a player completely shattered that assumption.
These are the unicorn seasons.
The ultimate unicorns. Winning the Selke and the Hart Memorial Trophy, which is the league's MVP award in the exact same season, has only happened one time in the history of the NHL.
Just once.
Sergei Fedorov captured both during the 1993-94 season with the Detroit Red Wings. He was simultaneously recognized as the league's ultimate defensive stopper and its most valuable overall player.
And what's fascinating here is that intersection of the Selke and the MVP. Historically, MVP voters are heavily seduced by pure offensive production.
They want the flashy numbers.
They do. So to convince the writers that you are the most valuable player in the league, primarily through a two-way defensive first game, is an incredibly steep hill to climb.
And if you drill down into that 93-94 season, you see just how razor-thin the margin is for achieving that kind of dual dominance.
It's almost physically impossible.
Because no player has ever won the Selke Trophy and the Art Ross Trophy, the award for the league's top scorer, in the same year.
The physical demand of leading the league in points while also acting as the primary defensive shield is seemingly a human limit.
but Fedorov pushed right up against that limit.
He really did. He finished second in regular season scoring that year.
He was one spot away from the ultimate triple crown: MVP, top scorer, and top defensive forward.
Just the stamina required to play those heavy defensive minutes, killing penalties, taking defensive zone faceoffs, and still outscore almost every single player in the league is absurd.
It's superhuman.
Yeah.
And Joe Sakic ran into a very similar invisible wall during the 2001 season.
The near misses are just as fascinating as the wins.
Sakic won the Hart Trophy for MVP, but he was the runner-up for the Art Ross scoring title, and he finished second in the voting for the Selke Trophy.
Agonizingly close.
He was so close to sweeping the three biggest individual honors a forward can win, but he just narrowly missed the statistical peak in those secondary categories.
It perfectly illustrates the trade-off we were talking about. You only have so much energy in a single shift.
But even with that trade-off, the offensive ceilings for these Selke winners can be remarkably high. The record for the most points scored in a single Selke winning season belongs to Doug Gilmour.
An absolute legend.
In the 1992-93 season with the Toronto Maple Leafs, Gilmour won the award while putting up 127 points.
Which fundamentally challenges the way we categorize these players.
Yeah, it breaks the mold.
When a player scores 127 points, we immediately label them an offensive dynamo. But Gilmour proves that elite defensive play isn't a sacrifice of offense.
It is often the catalyst for it.
Precisely. The mechanics of a two-way game, forcing turnovers in the neutral zone, stripping the puck on the backcheck, winning those heavy board battles that immediately flips the possession.
You catch the opponent moving the wrong direction, and suddenly you have an odd man rush.
Good defense doesn't just prevent goals, it mathematically creates higher quality offensive opportunities.
It's the engine of transition hockey. You aren't just surviving the opponent's shift. You are weaponizing their mistakes.
And if we look at how that philosophy scales up from individual players to entire organizations, the data reveals some stark contrasts.
It really shows how different franchises build their teams. If we look at the all-time leaderboard for Selke wins by teams, we have a three-way tie at the very top.
The big three.
The Montreal Canadiens, the Boston Bruins, and the Detroit Red Wings all have 7 awards each.
It's a neat statistical tie, but the architecture of those 7 wins tells 3 very different organizational stories.
Break that down for us.
Well, for Montreal and Boston, their success in this category is highly concentrated. Montreal's 7 trophies belong to just 2 players, Bob Gainey with 4 and Guy Carbonneau with 3.
Right. And Boston is almost entirely the Patrice Bergeron show. He holds 6 of their 7 awards, with the lone outlier being Steve Kasper way back in the 1981-82 season.
So for the Habs and the Bruins, their dominance here is the result of drafting a generational transcendent talent and just keeping them in the building for a very long time.
But Detroit's path to 7 trophies is an entirely different blueprint.
Completely different.
The Red Wings have the greatest number of unique Selke winners of any franchise in history. They have 4 different players who have won the award.
Sergei Fedorov won it twice.
Steve Yzerman won it once.
Chris Draper took it once.
And Pavel Datsyuk won it 3 times. And what is truly critical to note here is that all of Detroit's wins have come since 1994.
That is a remarkable concentration of distinct talent over a relatively short period.
To have 4 entirely different forwards recognized as the absolute pinnacle of defensive play over a multi-decade span completely removes the element of luck.
Absolutely. You don't just happen to draft 4 Selke winners by coincidence.
It points to a deeply ingrained systemic team culture.
When an organization produces that many unique winners, it means the front office, the scouting department, and the coaching staff are all aligned on a very specific vision of hockey.
They prioritize the two-way game, not just as a specialized role for a third-line checker, but as a mandatory expectation for their superstars.
You look at a player like Steve Yzerman. He entered the league as a pure offensive powerhouse. But under the Detroit system, he evolved into a Selke-winning 200-foot player.
They built an environment that actively developed and rewarded defensive responsibility across the entire roster.
It's the difference between finding a unicorn in the wild and actually breeding them.
I love that. Detroit created a culture where playing defense as a forward wasn't seen as a demotion. It was the standard for leadership.
It was expected.
So what does this all mean when we look at the complete picture of the Selke Trophy? We start with the league recognizing a gap in its foundational original 6 awards and deciding to honor the unsung heroes of the ice, naming it after Frank J. Selke.
We watched Bob Gainey immediately define the parameters of the award by sweeping its first 4 years.
We see the evolution of the position through unicorns like Sergei Fedorov and Doug Gilmour, who proved that defensive mastery can actually fuel elite offensive production,
And we end up with modern titans like Patrice Bergeron and Alexander Barkov.
who show that mastery, the unglamorous foundational mechanics of your role, makes you the most indispensable piece of a championship puzzle.
It's a history that forces us to reconsider how we assign value. The players etched onto this trophy mastered the quiet structural work that allows everyone else on the ice to take risks.
And for you listening, this connects right back to your own life. What is your two-way game? What is that foundational skill in your work that if you mastered it would make you completely indispensable?
But this deep dive also leaves us with a broader, somewhat provocative question about positional bias.
Oh, that's a great point.
Because the Selke Trophy was created specifically to reward forwards who excel at defense. We applaud them for going above and beyond to master a skill traditionally assigned to defensemen.
Right, we throw parades for them.
Exactly. But how often do we apply that same standard in reverse?
That is an interesting blind spot.
We routinely criticize defensemen who prioritize offense. We often label them as liabilities in their own zone, rather than celebrating them for expanding the boundaries of their role the way we do with Selke-winning forwards.
It raises a fascinating question about baseline expectations.
Are we biased toward praising people who adopt defensive foundational skills while remaining skeptical of those who abandon the foundation to be flashy?
It changes how you view a team's dynamic, whether you are watching a hockey game or evaluating the balance of skills in any collaborative environment.
It definitely forces you to look past the primary job description and see the whole board.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden mechanics of hockey greatness. Keep questioning those highlight reels. Look for the people doing the quiet work and keep exploring those surprising connections. We'll see you next time.